I came home after a 10-hour workday and found my home office turned into my sister's bedroom. My dual monitors were stacked in the hallway like garbage. My ergonomic chair was gone, and my mother looked me dead in the face and said, "You don't need all this as much as Ava does." I still remember the sound my laptop bag made when it slipped off my shoulder and hit the floor, because that was the exact moment I realized my family had never seen me as a daughter. Just a resource. My name is Nora Bennett. I'm 28, and I work remotely as a brand designer and web consultant for tech startups. Most months, I made between $6,000 and $8,500 depending on client retainers, and that income didn't just support me, it kept that house running. I paid the $110 internet bill every month because I needed fast upload speeds for client presentations. I covered the electric bill twice that winter when Dad fell behind. I had sent Mom $1,400 3 months earlier when she said the mortgage payment was a little tight. My office wasn't some cute little hobby room with a candle and a Pinterest desk. It was where I worked 12-hour launch weeks, where I took Zoom calls with founders in New York and San Francisco, where I edited pitch decks at midnight, where I earned the money that kept all of us comfortable. But none of that mattered in my family. In my family, my younger sister Ava was the golden child. Ava was 24, beautiful in that careless, expensive-looking way some women just are, even when they are wearing wrinkled sweatpants and somebody else's hoodie. She changed jobs the way normal people changed playlists. Boutique receptionist, yoga studio manager, real estate assistant, content creator. At one point, she sold handmade candles for 6 weeks and acted like she was building an empire. Every time one of her plans collapsed, my parents rushed in like she was a wounded princess returning from battle. Me? I was the reliable one. That was the family label they gave me sometime around age 16. And like most labels, it sounded flattering until you realized it was actually a trap. Nora's so mature. Nora understands. Nora doesn't make things harder. Which really meant Nora can be inconvenienced. Nora can sacrifice. Nora will survive it. I learned that early. When Ava wrecked her first car at 19, Dad used the $3,200 he'd promised toward my college housing deposit to help replace it. When Ava quit another job because her manager was toxic, Mom asked if I could quietly cover her phone bill just this once. When they were short on cash 2 summers ago, I was the one who dipped into my savings and sent them $5,000 to keep them from falling behind on the mortgage. They cried. They hugged me. Dad said, "We'll never forget this." They forgot. Or maybe they didn't forget. Maybe they just assumed I'd keep giving anyway. The worst part is, for a long time, I let them. By the time I moved back home at 26, it was supposed to be temporary. I'd just gotten out of a relationship, my lease was ending, and Mom insisted it made more sense to save money for a year and help each other out. "You can work from home," she'd said. "We'll give you the spare room as a real office. It'll be perfect." And honestly, for a while, it was. I painted the walls myself, a soft, warm white that looked clean on camera. I bought shelves, a proper desk, acoustic panels, and a second monitor with money I'd earned on a brutal branding project for a fintech startup. I built that room into something that made me feel proud. Professional, independent, safe. Clients complimented the space all the time. Then Ava broke up with her latest boyfriend and everything changed. She showed up on a Tuesday afternoon with 3 suitcases, 2 garbage bags full of clothes, and a pout that had always worked better on my parents than logic ever did. "I just need to stay here for a few weeks," she announced dramatically in the kitchen, dropping her bags like she was arriving at a hotel. Tyler turned out to be a complete narcissist. Mom wrapped her in a hug within seconds. Dad muttered something about that boy being no good anyway. I stood there with my coffee mug in hand, already feeling the shift in the room like pressure before a storm. A few weeks in my family never meant a few weeks. It meant rearranging reality until Ava felt comfortable. 3 days later, I came home from grabbing groceries after a client call and saw her makeup bag on the bathroom counter. Then her shoes by the stairs. Then her hair tools plugged into the outlet in my office. I paused in the doorway. "Ava," I said carefully, "why is your curling iron in here?" She was sitting in my chair. My chair. The one I'd spent $480 on because my back was killing me after 10-hour editing days. She spun around like she belonged there and smiled. Oh, Mom said I could use this room for a little while since it gets the best light. I laughed once because my brain genuinely refused to process what she'd said. For a little while? Before Ava could answer, Mom appeared behind me, wiping her hands on a dish towel like she had been waiting for this exact confrontation. Don't start, she said. Don't start? I repeated. This is my office. Mom crossed her arms. Your sister is going through a difficult time. And I'm working, I said. I have 2 client meetings tomorrow morning. What do you mean she's using my office? Dad's voice drifted in from the living room before he even bothered showing his face. You can work from anywhere, Nora. I stared at them. No, I can't. Not like I need to. Ava swiveled slowly in my chair and looked around the room like she was inspecting a rental. Honestly, it's kind of selfish to take the whole extra room just for computer stuff. Computer stuff. I actually felt my face go hot. My job, I said very quietly, is not computer stuff. Mom sighed like I was exhausting her. You can set up at the kitchen table for a while. This is temporary. Then the next day I came home and found the room gone. Not changed. Gone. My desk had been shoved against the wall. My monitors were unplugged. My docking station, cables, sketch tablets, camera stand, and hard drives had been dumped into 2 cardboard boxes in the hallway. Ava's comforter was on my daybed. Her framed photos were on my shelf. Her perfume sat where my client notebooks used to be. Ava needed a proper room, Mom said when she saw my face. We already moved everything. I looked at the boxes, then at my mother, then at my father, who suddenly found the TV very interesting. And my office? I asked. Mom's expression hardened. Do not be dramatic. Dramatic? My voice cracked. That office is how I pay bills in this house. Dad finally stood up. Watch your tone. I turned to Ava. Did you seriously think this was okay? She shrugged, already lying across my daybed scrolling her phone. You literally just sit at a laptop all day. And then Mom said the sentence that changed something in me forever. Don't be so selfish, Nora. That night, I took my first client call from the kitchen table while Ava blasted music upstairs and Mom clanged pans like she was personally auditioning for a revenge soundtrack. Halfway through my Zoom presentation, Dad started blending something in the kitchen behind me. My client paused and said, "Do you want to reschedule?" I smiled through humiliation and told him no. But that wasn't even the worst part. Because later that same evening, I overheard Ava laughing with Mom in the hallway and saying, "She'll get over it. She always does." And standing there in the dark, listening to them talk about me like I was furniture, I realized something terrifying. They were right. I always had gotten over it. Until that night. Because that was the night I opened my closet, pulled out 2 empty suitcases and started packing. And nobody in that house even noticed. I waited until 1:17 a.m. to leave because that was the kind of daughter my parents had raised. Even at my breaking point, I still didn't want to make noise. I stood in the middle of my half-empty room with my phone flashlight on, staring at the life I'd been shrinking to fit inside their house. 2 suitcases, 3 storage bins, my desktop tower wrapped in a blanket, my monitors tucked between winter coats so they wouldn't crack. Every cable I had paid for, every light, every mic, every external drive. Mine. Upstairs, Ava was laughing in her sleep-talky, drunk way. She'd had friends over that night. Of course she had. At 11:30, while I was trying to sort invoices and answer a client email from the edge of the kitchen counter, I'd heard her squeal from my old office, her room now, while someone yelled, "This setup is amazing." And another girl said, "Your sister's really letting you have all this?" Ava had laughed and said, "She doesn't really have a choice." That was the moment any guilt I had left died quietly. So at 1:17 a.m., I unplugged the last lamp, zipped the final suitcase, and carried everything down the hallway, one trip at a time. My new apartment wasn't glamorous. It was a small one-bedroom across town above a dentist's office with beige walls, a narrow galley kitchen, and just enough room in the corner by the window for a desk. I had signed the lease electronically 2 hours earlier from my phone while sitting on the bathroom floor because once I made the decision, I wasn't going to let myself get talked out of it. First month's rent, $1,650. Security deposit, $1,650. Pet fee didn't matter because I didn't have a pet. Freedom cost me $3,300 that night, and it was the best money I'd ever spent. I left my key on the kitchen counter next to a folded note. It said only one sentence. Now the office is completely yours. No speech, no dramatic goodbye, no plea for understanding. I was done explaining my worth to people who benefited from not seeing it. By 2:46 a.m., I was in my new place surrounded by boxes, sitting cross-legged on the floor with my laptop on top of one of them, reconnecting my equipment by the glow of the Wi-Fi router I'd brought with me. I had transferred my service to the new apartment the week before for a future move date I hadn't been sure I'd use. Somewhere deep down, maybe I had been preparing long before I admitted it to myself. At 8:12 the next morning, my phone exploded. Mom, Dad, Ava, Mom, Mom, Dad, Ava. Then 3 missed FaceTimes in a row. I stared at the screen while sipping gas station coffee from a paper cup because none of my mugs were unpacked yet. I let it ring. Then buzz. Then ring again. Finally, Ava texted first. "Where are you?" Then Mom. "Nora, this is not funny. Call me immediately." Then Dad. "You took the internet equipment?" I actually laughed out loud in my empty apartment. Not, "Are you okay?" Not, "Why did you leave in the middle of the night?" Not, "Can we talk?" No. Their first real emergency was the Wi-Fi. I texted back one sentence. "I took what I pay for." The 3 dots appeared instantly under Mom's name. "So you're punishing us now?" That word hit me like ice water. Punishing. As if leaving a house where I wasn't respected was cruelty. As if stopping my own financial support was aggression. As if I was still supposed to smile while funding my own humiliation. I set the phone down and opened my laptop because I had a 9 a.m. rebrand call with a startup founder in Seattle. And for the first time in weeks, the call went perfectly. No blender in the background. No sister screaming into her phone upstairs. No mother stomping through my frame pretending not to notice I was live on camera. At the end of the call, my client leaned back and smiled. "This is your best presentation yet, Nora." I muted myself for 1 second just to breathe. Because what he didn't know was that I had given that presentation from a folding chair in an apartment full of unopened boxes, and I had never felt more stable in my life. By noon, the texts had turned uglier. Mom, you cannot just leave responsibilities behind. Dad, mortgage is due this week. We were counting on your transfer. Ava, also my interview is on Thursday, and now I don't even have proper internet. This is unbelievably selfish. There it was again. Selfish. That word families like mine use when your obedience expires. I typed carefully. I was paying $110 for internet, around $240 toward utilities, and $1,400 when you were short on the mortgage. That stops now. Mom called immediately. I answered this time, mostly because I wanted to hear the audacity live. She didn't even say hello. "How could you do this to us?" I looked around my apartment. Sunlight on beige carpet, one plant on the windowsill. My monitors finally set up on a temporary table. Peace. "How could I do what?" I asked. "Move out?" "You left in the middle of the night like a criminal." "No," I said. "I left quietly because every time I try to talk in that house, I get told I'm dramatic." Her breathing sharpened. "Your sister needed support. And I needed a place to work." "You still had a place to work," she snapped. "The kitchen." I actually closed my eyes for a second. Mom, I lost a contract because I couldn't work properly. Silence. Then, unbelievably, well, that's not Ava's fault. I laughed once. A hard little sound that didn't even feel like mine anymore. No, it's yours and Dad's. She gasped like I had slapped her. After everything we've done for you, I cut in. You mean letting me pay bills in a house where my work was treated like a joke? My mother's voice dropped low and dangerous. Family helps family. I leaned back in the chair and said the sentence I think she least expected from me. I did. For years. You just never thought it would end. She hung up. An hour later, Dad called, but his approach was different. More practical. More manipulative in that tired, reasonable voice men use when they want something and don't want to sound like they're asking. Your mother's upset, he began. I'm sure she is. There was a pause. You should have discussed this first. I discussed my office. Nobody cared. That's not the point. It is exactly the point. He exhaled slowly. We have bills, Nora. I stared at the spreadsheet open on my laptop. New client deposit pending, rent paid, utilities in my name only. Numbers that finally belong to my life, not theirs. I know, I said. That's what bills are. The people who live there should pay them. Another pause. Then he said, We're still your family. I don't know why that sentence hurt more than the others. Maybe because part of me had wanted him to say something fatherly, something protective, something human. Instead, it sounded like a debt collector using blood as leverage. That night, Ava posted an Instagram story from inside my old office, her room with the caption, Fresh Start, and in the corner of the photo, just barely visible, was the empty spot where my monitor arms used to be. 3 days later, the real collapse started. Mom sent a text at 7:04 a.m. Electric got shut off warning. Call me. At 7:19 a.m., Dad. Need your help just this month. At 8:02 a.m., Ava. My interview was on Zoom and the connection dropped twice because I had to hotspot from my phone. Do you realize what you've done? I stared at that message for a long time because for the first time in my life, I finally did realize what I'd done. I had stepped away, and without me there to cushion every fall, they were hitting the ground. But that wasn't even the part that changed everything. The part that changed everything was the voicemail my mother left that night, crying so hard she could barely breathe, saying 5 words I had waited my whole life to hear. Nora, we really need you. And this time, I didn't feel needed. I felt free. 3 days after I moved out, the silence in my apartment started to feel normal. Not the tense silence I grew up with. The kind where everyone was pretending nothing was wrong while resentment sat at the table with us. This was different. This was the quiet of a place where nobody expected anything from me except rent on the first and my own peace. I woke up at 7:30, made coffee in a mug that finally wasn't shared with 4 other people, and opened my laptop by the window. The city outside was already moving, cars passing, someone walking a dog, a delivery truck backing into the alley. My inbox had 3 new client requests. One startup wanted a full brand redesign. Another asked about a long-term consulting contract. And the third email was from a company I'd pitched months earlier. Before I even finished my coffee, I had confirmed 2 new projects worth almost $11,000. Oh, it was the first week in months that my work actually flowed again. No interruptions, no kitchen noise during Zoom calls, no sister shouting into the phone behind my wall. And strangely, the better my life got, the worse things seemed to be going at my parents' house. My phone buzzed around noon. Dad. I let it ring twice before answering. Nora, he said immediately, voice tight. Your mother says you're ignoring her. I'm working. Well, we're dealing with a situation here. I leaned back in my chair. What kind of situation? He hesitated. The internet's been cut. I almost smiled. Yeah, I said calmly. That happens when the bill isn't paid. You used to handle that. Yes, I replied. When I lived there. Another pause. And the electric company sent another warning. He continued. I rubbed my temple slowly. Dad, I moved out. You're still part of this family. That sentence again? The invisible contract I never signed. I was part of the bills too, I said quietly. Remember that. He didn't respond for several seconds. Then he muttered something about calling back later and hung up. That afternoon, Ava texted me, You seriously ruined my interview. I stared at the message. Then another one appeared. The connection kept dropping. The recruiter said we'd reschedule, but now I look unprofessional. For a moment, I almost replied with sympathy. Old habits. But then I remembered her voice from that night in the hallway. She'll get over it. She always does. So I typed only one sentence. You could always get your own internet. The typing bubble appeared instantly. Wow, so you're just abandoning us now? I didn't answer, because the truth was finally becoming clear. I hadn't abandoned them. I had simply stopped carrying them. And without that support, their system was collapsing faster than even I expected. 2 days later, Mom called again. This time her voice wasn't angry, it was panicked. Nora, we need to talk. I muted my microphone during a design export and sighed. What happened now? The mortgage company called. My fingers froze above the keyboard. What about it? We're behind. How far? Another pause. 2 months. I blinked. Mom, how? You stopped helping, she snapped suddenly. There it was again. Responsibility shifted like gravity. I helped for years, I said slowly. Well, we thought you would keep helping, she said, almost shouting now. And that was the moment something in my chest finally settled. Because she had just admitted the truth. They hadn't expected gratitude. They had expected permanence. Nora, she continued, voice softening again. We're family. We take care of each other. I looked around my small apartment, my desk, my equipment, my work. For the first time in years, everything in my life actually belonged to me. Mom, I said calmly, when I needed a workspace, you gave my office away. That's different. No, I replied. It isn't. She went quiet. And then she said the sentence families like mine always say when the safety net disappears. Are you really going to let us struggle like this? I leaned forward and closed my laptop. Because the answer to that question was the moment my entire life finally changed. Yes, I said. And for the first time in 28 years, I meant it. After I told my mother, yes, the line went completely silent. Not the dramatic kind of silence you hear in movies. No gasps, no shouting, just the quiet sound of someone realizing that the control they thought they had over you no longer existed. Then she whispered, almost disbelieving, I don't recognize you anymore. For a second, the old version of me almost apologized. But that girl, the one who paid bills quietly, who worked from the kitchen table while everyone else slept comfortably upstairs, who believed love meant endless sacrifice, she didn't live here anymore. You're right, I said calmly. You don't. And I ended the call. For the next week, my phone kept lighting up. Mom left 3 voicemails in one day. Dad sent short, irritated texts. We just need help temporarily. Family doesn't abandon each other like this. Call your mother. Ava's messages were the worst. At first, she tried guilt. You know, Dad's stressed about the mortgage. Then anger. I hope you're happy ruining everything. And finally, pure desperation. Can you at least send the internet money? I have another interview. I didn't reply. Instead, I focused on my life, the one I had finally started building for myself. Work exploded in the best possible way. Without constant interruptions, I finished projects faster. Clients referred me to other founders. A startup in Austin signed me on a $4,500 monthly retainer to handle their branding and product launch visuals. Another company asked me to redesign their entire website. By the end of the month, I had earned more than I had in any month the entire year before. And for the first time, every dollar stayed in my account. No emergency transfers, no guilt payments, no temporary help that quietly became permanent. Just my money, my work, my life. Meanwhile, the house I had left behind kept unraveling. The updates came through scattered texts and family gossip. First, the internet service was suspended. Then the electricity company placed a final notice on the door. Then Dad called again one evening, his voice tight and exhausted. "Nora, we need to talk." I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. "What happened?" I asked. "The bank called again." I closed my laptop slowly. "And?" "They want the missed payments by the end of the month." My father cleared his throat. "Your sister can't help. She hasn't found another job yet." Of course she hadn't. "And we were hoping," he continued carefully, "that maybe you could transfer something. Just enough to stabilize things." There it was. The familiar request disguised as responsibility. For years, that sentence would have triggered immediate panic in me. I would have opened my banking app before the call even ended. But now, sitting in my quiet apartment with sunlight across my desk, the pressure simply wasn't there anymore. "Dad," I said evenly, "I already stabilized things for years." "That's different." "No," I replied gently. "It isn't." He exhaled heavily. "You're letting pride destroy this family." I leaned back in my chair. "No," I said. "I stopped letting it destroy me." He hung up. A week later, Mom called again. This time her voice was small. "Careful." "Nora, we're family." I almost smiled. That phrase used to feel powerful. Now it just sounded empty. "You're right," I said. "We are." She sounded relieved for half a second. Then I finished the sentence. But family shouldn't only work in one direction. Silence. When you needed my money, my office, my help, everything was yours, I continued. When I needed a place to work in my own home, suddenly I was selfish. She didn't respond. And that was the moment I realized something important. They weren't angry because I had hurt them. They were angry because the system stopped working. The system where Nora paid. Nora adjusted. Nora sacrificed. And once that system broke, they didn't know how to function without it. Before hanging up, my mother said one last thing. "You've changed." I looked around my apartment again. The desk by the window. The monitors glowing with a new project. The calm that had replaced years of quiet resentment. "Yes," I said. I finally did. That night, I worked late finishing a brand identity package for a client in California. Around midnight, I stepped onto the small balcony outside my apartment. The city lights were glowing. The air was cool. My phone was quiet. For the first time in a long time, there were no demands waiting for me. No guilt. No pressure. Just peace. And standing there, I realized something I wish I had understood years earlier. I used to believe family meant the people who needed you the most. But sometimes family is simply the people you have to walk away from, so you can finally build a life that belongs to you.